Hey everybody, welcome to the ZiaWoolz podcast. My name is Doug and this is a podcast where I talk about the wool and yarn and all the beautiful things that you can make in the fiber arts. So I'm glad to be back with you. I sadly don't have Mom with me anymore. She visited from Germany for 2 months, but I had her record a goodbye message for you all before she left, and so I'm going to insert that right here.
Hallo ihr Lieben, ich möchte mich jetzt noch kurz verabschieden. Morgen geht es wieder zurück nach Deutschland, aber ich möchte euch doch vorher meine Arbeit noch zeigen, die ich vollbracht habe hier.
So Oma just said she wants to say goodbye before she heads on back to Germany tomorrow, but she wanted to show you all what she has worked on and what she has finished during her time here in Albuquerque. Okay.
Einmal, da habe ich euch ja schon gezeigt, meinen Anfang. Und nun zeige ich euch das vollbrachte Stück.
Wow.
Soweit.
Toll.
Naja, und dann kann die Oma auch nicht ohne da sitzen und nur Däumchen drehen und hat dann halt wieder mal ein paar Babyschuhchen gestrickt. Ja, das sind beides die gleichen Größen und die sind ein bisschen größer.
So this is what she made after the blanket was done because she cannot be without work. So there's a bunch of babies coming in her closer circle of friends, like great-grandchildren and such. And so she made this. And yeah, this one. Such cute yarns. And two in a smaller size, and one is a little bit, one pair. I think this one is supposed to be ein bisschen größer sein.
Mhm.
Yeah. So cute. And then we celebrated her birthday yesterday. Gestern hatte sie Geburtstag. Da haben wir sie noch verwöhnt, jedes Jahr, wenn sie hier die 2 Monate oder 6 Wochen bei uns verbringt, bleibt sie bis zu ihrem Geburtstag im Januar und dann darf sie wieder nach Hause und das war gestern. Und deshalb habe ich noch eine Sache mit hierher gebracht, die ich euch zeigen wollte, die ich für sie gemacht habe. Und zwar hatte ich ihr eine Lupe gekauft, die ich selbst auch habe, die ich sehr liebe, die so in verschiedenen Größen, für verschiedene Vergrößerungen ist und mit einer Lampe auch dabei. Ist ziemlich genial, aber natürlich will man für sowas ein Etui haben und da habe ich ihr noch so ein Täschchen dazu gemacht.
Sehr schön.
So this was one of the gifts for her birthday, and which is kind of like a oh, goodness, words. Well, it has a light and it does enlargements. Yay. Looks kind of funny. It's really handy, but you want a pouch for it, and so I made this one for Mom. And the thing is that it's kind of special the way I picked the fabrics because her aunt and my great aunt, she was making quilts with these vintage style fabrics, so that reminded me of her aunt, my great aunt, whom I loved very much, as well as this fabric, which is vintage. And so I ended up putting a cotton batting in there, and on the inside it has flannels, and so that's where she's going to keep this. So this was the little Oma-sode, the Oma episode, and so she says
Ja.
goodbye.
Die Oma sagt Bye-bye, vielleicht bis an kommende Weihnachten. Bye. Bleib gesund.
And I will be back talking to you shortly about the stuff that I have been up to. So, Mom showed that blanket. Goodness. It's amazing. She had a lot of fun making it, and while it's not quite as big as the first one that she made for our daughter, it's still a good size, and I cannot show it to you again because our son took it to the dorms with him. He was very excited and I think very touched also that she made something so special for him. So he really got it. I mean, he saw her working the whole time while she was here on it, and so he knew what was involved in making a blanket. So she makes it, she made it with 3mm needles, and each square had cast on 49 stitches. That is the same way that I make my blankets, which I'm going to show you another time. So I did bring the booties over one more time that she had already shown you, because that was the other thing that she made while she was here. This is a very old pattern. I don't know what it's called. She got it many, many years ago from a magazine, and it is really a pattern that has the booties stay on the baby's feet very, very well, because as you can see, it really has this base here, and it has you start knitting it down here, and in the end you close a seam here and in the back. And I already had many of these for our kids and loved them. I mean, I had them in wool and whatever fiber you can imagine for summer and winter, and I had a May and a September baby, so I needed them throughout all the seasons, and these are really the favorites and the best ones. So, Mom's gone. Too bad. It was nice. Good times. So, that was one thing that I wanted to talk about, Mom, and also what happened after the last podcast is that I traveled, which was great fun. And I had a lot of knitting time because my husband and I drove south through Las Cruces into El Paso and then to Big Bend National Park, which, I mean, even just the name I wasn't familiar with, but I really, really enjoyed it. And I also liked driving because that, as you all know, meant that I had a lot of knitting time because he drove the whole time, and it was a lot of driving. So great. And I got my sweater done. So you may remember handspun yarn. This is the Dalen pullover pattern by Isabel Kramer. It's the fourth one that I made. And this one I heavily modified because I had to adjust because it was handspun yarn, or it is made with handspun yarn with a little bit of a heavier gauge. A heavier yarn, so I had to go up a needle size, and but I just eyeballed it because I was kind of familiar still with the pattern. But my problem was that with the high alpaca content, I knew that I was gonna run out of yarn while I was in between the knitting. So I got in touch with the fiber mill, Yampa Valley Fiber Works in Colorado, and they found more fiber for me, or they matched it up. I had ended up sending them a sample, and they sent me some fiber back, and I spun it, and it matched close enough to make me happy and to not go crazy over matching and blending it in and whatnot. So let me stand up so I can show you. I made it very long, and that's a good thing for a warm sweater. So, long sleeves, and this is where the new fiber starts. Ta-da! So you can tell it covers my butt, and it kept me very warm because we ended up having a cold spell down in Texas. And let me take this off now, or I shall suffer a heat stroke. And then I will tell you a little bit more about the sweater. So here a close-up of where I have different colors. So here's the first color, and this is the one that they matched for me. Same down here, from here to there. And what I did is I eyeballed roughly so I would have the same length of the first colorway, and with my arms hanging down, so that the new color would start at about the same height. Does that make sense? I'm all fuzzy, sorry. And you can see the new yarn has a little bit more of a purplish hint to it, whereas the old one has more maybe blues and greens in it. But to me, that's fine. I can tell, but when I really, because I know it when I look at it, but it doesn't bother me, and I find it close enough to really still make me very happy. It is very warm, and it was great because when it got cold, all of a sudden I wore it all the time. By then I had finished it, and I wore it unblocked, and that was fine. I wanted to say something about the neckline. I don't know if you remember, but I wanted to do a top-down V-neck, which is shaped by short rows. I had a few problems, but in the end, what I find is that when you want this distance to go deeper down, it does not really make a lot of sense to cast on all the stitches and then work in short rows around and around until you can join to knit in the round here. And the reason is that there is a lot of tension here, and you cannot see it much anymore because I was able to block it out quite a bit. But before blocking, you could totally tell that the fabric, especially in this area, was kind of bunched up. And I did not like that so much. So I'm gonna take a look at other patterns and maybe give it another go. I know that Isabel Kramer has one more pattern with a rounded V-neck, actually a similar shape than this one. And I don't know if she also has a one with a deeper V-neck, but I have to look. I have a lot of rounded necklines in my sweater, so maybe it's time for something different. But in the meantime, I have another project for another sweater where there won't be a V-neck. Let me talk about it. You've heard about this before. I have started spinning for the fog cutter. And I'm using Ramelais fiber, which I have sourced locally in New Mexico, and I had processed in Michigan by Zeilinger's fiber mill. And I have dyed the fiber because I didn't want to spin a white. I was thinking it was going to be too boring. So I dyed it in a very pale watery blue because I like that off-white look of the way they have it in the pattern. So here's my yarn, 2 skeins, and where's the third one? Oops, sorry. Here's my first one balled up. So I had a little bit of an issue with this. So I kind of blazed through the spinning because I was really looking forward to starting the sweater. Then I watched, probably like you all as well, I watched the interview with Isabel Kramer on the Fruity Knitting podcast. I loved that so much. It was so great to see the woman. So Isabel showed a bunch of quite large swatches. So I thought, I'm going to be like Isabel Kramer. I'm going to make a large swatch. So this is what I ended up with. I mean, this is, for me, it's a large swatch. As you may know, sometimes they end up like this big. So I made this. And I do love it very much. So here's the issue that I encountered. My gauge is quite a bit off, and that I can kind of remedy. That's okay. That's not too bad. I mean, that was to be expected because it's hand spun. But what I also wasn't sure about is that my fabric is going to have these holes, and it doesn't, while it's visible in the original design, I don't know, I didn't give it a thought, I guess. And now I was a little bit surprised at how big they are. So I ran into a whole bunch of issues. Once I started thinking about it, I thought, oh, these holes, my gauge is totally off. Then I started reading in the pattern and I saw that there's a lot of reverse stockinette, which I'm not a huge fan of. So I'm still not 100% decided if I'm gonna really do that or if I'm not just gonna flip it around and do stockinette. And the other thing is something in the pattern that was kind of odd to me, and I don't know why she does it like that. It's that there is a certain amount of stitches in the ribbing on the bottom. It's a pieced garment, so you have to seam in the end. That's fine, but you do the ribbing on the bottom, and then you knit the garment with the same needle size all over, and then you decrease a certain amount of stitches after the ribbing. And I've never had that. I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to do. Is the reasoning because you have, I just don't know. I haven't figured it out. So I'm kind of curious. That kind of threw me off a little bit in the beginning. And also that was another thing. I wanted to cast on last night. I thought, screw all this. I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna not do all that crazy math to adjust my gauge. Plus, she suggests to go to take into account a certain amount of positive ease. So what I ended up deciding on was I'm just going to go up one needle size. No, not one needle size, one size to give myself the positive ease. And then I'm going to go up one more size in the pattern to accommodate my need for more stitches. So I decided that's just what I'm going to do. So keep your fingers crossed that this is going to work out. I will start with the back of the sweater because the cable-y thing in the front, that was quite demanding. I don't know if I have the brain space for that right now, but I always like starting sweaters in the back when they're pieced. So that's what I'm going to do. Fog Cutter. I think the designer's name is Thea Coleman. It says Baby Cocktails on it. So maybe that's just the designer thingamajig name. So again, the little swatch. Okay, that was this. I also have picked up, I had finished a shawl and I had thought about finishing the Spice Market by Melanie Berg. I had shown you that on the last podcast, but then I had brought it on the trip, and then once I started thinking about it a little bit more, I thought, I'm not so sure that it's really Mom's style. I know she loves blues, and she's that kind of person who looks really good in that darker blue. But the way this is combined with green and lighter blues, I ended up thinking, maybe not hers after all. So I kept wondering, what could I do? And I remembered that I had purchased 2 years ago in Germany some Wollmeise, which I originally had intended to use for a shawl for Mom. And so I grabbed that, and I have to tell you what I want to make with it, because I did find a pattern. I came upon this and I thought that's the one, because I like my triangular ones so much that I recently made. So I thought Mom needs a triangle. It is Lemmy K by the wonderful Isabel Kramer. And I cast it on with my Wollmeise in a beautiful tonal gray. This is a DK weight. And then I thought, I want a little bit more color in the shawl the way I had it in my other ones. And I thought, I'm just going to make that up. So at this point, I have already made it larger than Isabel gives in her pattern before you start a pattern section. So I'm going to keep going a little bit. My skein had a knot, and so I split it here, and I still have this, but I'm probably going to knit this up before I start the pattern section. And then I will use something which I also found in Stash. These are both Madeline Tosh's DK. And so this one has more blue and a hint of purple, is altogether lighter versus this one. And oh, I forgot to mention, I'm having this in one of my bags that I made with the baby Frida girls with the cactus, and on the back, llamas or alpacas. I never quite know. These guys have rosy cheeks. Isn't that cute? Okay. So this is Madeline Tosh Pashmina, and I've had this in my stash for a while. 75, 1510 merino silk and cashmere sport weight. Oops, not superwash. Okay, gotta tell Mom. So this one is the colorway Mala, M-A-L-A. That's what I read. And the other one, same yarn, Pashmina, in the colorway Lichen. This is kind of my fun in between, easy go-to knit. But I haven't started that pattern section, so we'll see how that goes then. Still have a little bit of easy knitting on it. I am making it with, I believe, 4mm needles. I'm a tight knitter, by the way. Lemmy K by Isabel Kramer. I have picked up, since I finished a pair of socks, which I will show you in a second, I have picked up another pair that I have been thinking about when I picked those up, when I had those started, and I'm thinking probably about 2 years ago. That's terrible, even though I love the colors so much. Look at that. That's so my colors, that poison green and the bright pinky purpley color orange combined with that warm light brownish gray and turquoise. The yarn is, of course, by the fabulous Mrs. Nomadic Yarns in the colorway Wanderlust. I love that. It's a German word. I think it's one of those that is used in English, isn't it? Also, isn't that a word already? Wanderlust. So, and that's, I'm still at the, oh, I forgot to finish telling you about this. I got distracted by telling you about the yarn. So when I picked it up, I was about here. And I did knit 2 more stripes, and then I started the heel flap. And now I finished the gusset, and I'm ready to just zoom through the foot. I was thinking about putting in a different colored heel, but I was just too lazy to find something because I was just going knitting away, and so I didn't want to search. So, but it's okay. I like that anyways. It's kind of, the funny thing is, have you ever had that when you have not worked on a project in a while, that then when you start knitting again, you can totally tell where those stitches were on hold because all the stitches are slightly twisted? I see that here totally. Let me see if I can show you. I'm gonna turn it. It's right here. Can you tell? That's kind of, wonder why that is. I've had it sometimes when I've put stitches on hold for sleeves, when it's on yarn or something, and it really takes a while to get to. But this is on a sock. I haven't had that. But whatever, it'll block out easily. Doesn't bother me. And I'm not a person who makes New Year's resolutions, but then you see all the people talking about it, and I mean, people post about it and whatnot on Instagram, and so you kind of can't help thinking a little bit about things that the way you have done things and the way you want to maybe do them a little differently in the new year. And one thing that I had realized about myself is that I tend to get, while I like casting on, but then the reality is that I don't pick them all up. I can't work on like 5 projects and rotate around. That's something that I don't really enjoy. What I really like to do, and what I think what I'm gonna try to make my practice, is maybe have 2 large projects and a pair of socks, which is, the socks are always a good thing to throw in your purse. And then I thought, can I commit to only, excuse me, only one other project? No, I can't, because it would mean I would have to decide what's more important to me now. Should I knit a shawl first, or should I knit a sweater first, or should I knit something for the kids first? So that's probably not realistic to think that I'm going to do that. But like right now, when I finished the sweater, I thought my sweater has to be done first before I start a new one. And then I started the white one for Fiona. I will tell you about that in a moment. And that one was also, in the end, I was very tempted to start the fog cutter before I had finished hers, but I made myself finish hers, and then I started the fog cutter, or picked that yarn back up and whatnot. So I'm just gonna, I think that's just the way I want to go. I want to watch myself and kind of like not go the easy route, kind of like skip the finishing one thing just because it's not the part that I enjoy so much, and in favor of a new project and then not get the other one done. That's kind of silly. So I'm gonna, yeah, that's something that I just wanna watch out for a little bit more. So as you have seen in the background, let me grab it. I have finished another one of the fuzzies. And I will insert some pictures of my daughter wearing it at the end. And what I have done, I had made a first one in blue for myself, where I used the blue fuzzy yarn and I held it together with some stash yarn in a very similar color. And then I was thinking, because my daughter liked it so much, so, and she's very much into the whites and the grays and blacks, and so I saw that there is that same yarn in white, and I knew I had a yarn to hold it together with in my stash, and I'm talking vintage, seriously vintage stash. But I had mom get it for me in Germany, the fuzzy stuff, and then I brought that on the trip to Texas, and I worked on it after I finished the sweater and the socks, I believe, which I still haven't shown you. Let me just do that in between, because I keep saying that I'm going to tell you about my socks, and then I don't show you. That was one of my super early speckled yarns, a little bit of a different technique, which I haven't done since then, but I really, really love these guys. And I normally don't have a leg that long, but in this case I just kept going and going and going because I enjoyed so much seeing how the colors play together. So yep, now I haven't worn them yet, but I will very soon. So here is my leftover bag of yarn, and the fuzzy white is called Harry Lala Berlin, and it has 7% polyamide, 42 polyacrylic, 14 virgin wool, and 37 alpaca. And every 50 gram skein has about 80 meters. Now the white yarn, I doubt that's still available, but for a project like this, you could pretty much use anything and hold it together with it. I just thought something more, let's call it summery, with a cotton content would probably work well and give it a little bit of a drape. And the yarn that I have as my second one is Gediva. Again, a European yarn. I think it's made in Italy. 70% cotton and 30 polyamide. Looks a little bit like it has rayon or something in it with a nice drape. So I held these two together and I knitted the cardigan with a 10mm needle. As you may imagine, this knits up extremely fast. So I have just about 50 stitches for my back. And not quite that many for each front half. It's constructed bottom up. And here you continue the color until it meets in the back in the middle, and that's where the stitches get grafted. So one thing that I had to pay attention to, and I learned that from when I made the blue one for myself, is that you need to knit this a little bit longer than you kind of would normally to match, because you want it to have enough length to be able to fold it over and without pulling the whole cardigan together in the back. So I just gave it probably about 8 extra rows. Another thing that I noticed, which was very interesting, so when you graft, you would think that it mimics one row of stitches. And usually when you graft, it doesn't really matter. Here it mattered because I wanted to have a purl ridge and a purl ridge and what looks like 2 knit rows in between. On the back, it's 2 purl. So that was kind of my thing where I could check and make sure. So it was so odd to me, and I made 2 attempts to see that when you graft here, so I finished, I made my purl row, and here I did the purl row and 1 knit row, thinking that then I graft and it will make this row. No, grafting looks like 2 rows. It makes no sense to me. I don't understand it logically. Do you? I just went by what I saw then in my knitting, and I frogged and went back and tried again and thought I did something wrong and I overlooked something, but no, I didn't. I had to go back, and where I stopped after both purl rows, then did the grafting, and then I got what looks like 2 knit rows. So weird. Okay, so you may remember my cardigan being shorter. It ends at my hip. This one is a kind of like a coat, ends mid-thigh. And the sleeves, for the sleeves, what I did was I left the side seam open. I had closed the shoulder with a 3 needle bind off, and then I laid it flat and picked up stitches from that edge. What I did so that my seam would not be wonky or what, is that I counted my edge stitches going up here. Like, I think I did 33 edge stitches on both sides. I marked those, and then I started picking up the stitches after that. And I don't even know if that makes any sense for you, because what I mean with an edge stitch is in a garment like this, where I know I will seam later, I finish every row with a slip stitch with a yarn in front, and then the first stitch, when I've turned my work, is that I will knit through the back loop, the first stitch. This gives you a stitch that it almost like, if that's your fabric, you have the last stitch almost sitting over it totally to the side. Does that make any sense to you? Have you ever done that? I don't know. But it's really nice for seaming. Ask me if you don't understand, but you're curious about this. This is how I learned to knit, by the way. So altogether, I'm sorry to say there's no pattern for this. I have taken quite good notes, but I will have to knit this again because the fuzzy yarn is discontinued, and some of you have asked me, are you going to publish? This looks so great, and I like it myself, so I'm kind of working on this right now to make it possibly a pattern. And because it's such an oversized garment, I'm thinking maybe 2 sizes, which would fit most people, a small, medium size, and then a large, extra large. I think that would work, and that's the route that I'm gonna go, but it's gonna be a while before I get to this. Here it is again. She's happy, she loves it, and that makes me happy, of course. So what else? Oh goodness, yes. I made something all morning today. It took me about 3 hours, something like that. But I am super excited for it. And I have mentioned a while ago that I keep my needles in a total mess. I have a lot of needles that I have collected over the years, circular mainly. And I'm keeping them in 2 hat boxes. Actually, no, I'm lying. This is a hat box, and this is a box, a vintage box designed for knitting needles, circular ones. of course. And I have also this little box where I keep my small ones in for hats. Short ones, very short ones. So the problem was that when I was looking for a specific needle, I usually had to dump everything out because it was all mumbo jumbo mixed up. So I have, my favorite needles are the ZiaWoolz, the ones with the red lace, and I have those in a special container, in a special needle cozy that I was lucky enough to win. I will have to show you that another time. But my thought was that I would always like, that I was always thinking I would really love to sew a hanging device where my needles are sorted. And I know you can purchase those, but I mean, that's where I must have seen them. Maybe online, I don't know. I've seen that, but I have not seen it for sale anywhere. I haven't searched for it either because I thought then I want to make mine. So as I was going through my needles, looking for the right needles for the new sweater, and it made me so crazy again that now with mom being gone and me spending some time in my studio where I had to clean up, and I did some things that I didn't get around to while she was here because we wanted to spend the time together and not with me cleaning up. So now that I was in the studio, I kind of had sorted fabric. I had put away some stuff that we had purchased together. And so everything was looking then very nice. My work table was empty. And I thought, I should go for it and do that now. I remembered I had a tablecloth, a vintage one that I had found in a thrift store, and it was not usable as a tablecloth anymore. So I pulled that out and I looked at it, and that was indeed usable. So I decided I want to use this fabric as the decoration part of my hanging device for my circular needles. And I stabilized it with some fusible cotton, and then I attached down. Let me just show you. It makes the most beautiful clanging sound, like cowbells. There it is. This thing makes me so happy. So I'm just gonna keep it here. I think many of you sew as well. So I just want to say a few things about my process. I used this canvas fabric. I just like the color. So I cut a strip that was slightly wider than my embroidered fabric. Here's a close-up of that. Then the canvas, I took essentially the whole width of that yard of fabric that I had. So you can actually see the selvage here. So I took that and I attached my decorative fabric on one side. Then I knew I was going to do some kind of a hanging technique. I knew I was going to have it on a clothes hanger, but I didn't want to attach it to it right away because I would have had to flip the fabric over it and then sew it shut and never be able to take it off of that. So I am using a rod now, and I have that just tied on with some of my leftover strips. I then decided so this all kind of worked out measurement wise, because and it was just a funny coincidence that it was just, the strip of fabric was just long enough to go back to up here. So I folded it over for the wooden rod, and then I folded the other half up after I had attached my decorative fabric. And you can literally, of course, take just about anything for that. I mean, you don't have to use anything embroidered. You can also just use only fabric. So what did I want to say? So the mistake that I made was, I can't remember now. I did something wrong up here where I had to undo it a little bit. I can't remember now. So then so once I had it flipped up here, I knew I wanted a double compartment on the back where I could insert something to stabilize it, because I didn't want it to collapse with the weight of the needles and to be all scrunched up. And so I flipped this over and I thought, okay, now so I had that double layer of fabric attached. I think that's where I messed up. I did that. I had already attached the back up here, and then I remembered that I wanted to make this long pocket that goes all the way down, and I hadn't done that. So I had to take open these seams and attach that. So just make sure, if you want to make one of these, lay out your fabric, then make sure on the back you have that double pocket. Now, initially, I thought I was just gonna do like the main needle sizes. So I thought I'm gonna have 3-inch compartments, and that's how I started off. I marked my sewing lines with one of those markers that come off when you iron. And I started sewing those, and of course at the same time I realized I cannot insert something to stabilize the back and then sew this. So what I ended up doing, I cut up the strips of slightly less than 3 inches of a doubled up cardboard. I mean, anything you have at home. I'm sure you have something, maybe not. I'm paper dag, so I have a lot of that stuff. So I had 3-inch strips. It's doubled cardboard, and so what I did was I marked my compartment. I think I had, oh, now I know, now I remember. I had 27 inches. So I thought I'm gonna have 9 compartments of 3 inches width, or height, I should say. I sewed all of those compartments, and then I tried to put a needle in. I put a needle in and realized that I don't need that much. In fact, I realized I can make half of that, 1.5 inches. So, what I did when I did the 3-inch ones, I I inserted the cardboard, then which was like a little bit less than 3 inches, and the width to match between my seams. I stuck that in, and then I sewed along my line for the 3 inches. So okay, so I had my cardboard, and I thought, what am I going to do if I make that smaller? I thought, I'm just going to try to sew over it, and that's what I did, and that worked just fine. I believe that you just have to make sure that your stitches are not very short, or you would like totally perforate your cardboard. May not even matter in this case, actually. But whatever, I had it set on 2.5 stitch length, and I could easily sew over the cardboard. So, and then I started putting in my needles. I think one of the parts that I kept me from making this also, I mean, apart from it being a lot of work, was that I was never quite certain on how I would mark for the different needle sizes. And I now decided I'm not going to mark it at all in the front. I have marked it with the erasable, again with that fusion pen that goes away when you iron it. And that was good because I ended up, I always, if you ask me, do you have what needle sizes do you have? I would say I only have the 0.5 millimeter sizes. So like starting needles with needles of 2 millimeter, then 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, and so forth. Now that I checked all my needles, I found a few in between sizes, which are probably US sizes. And so I accommodated those. And I have written the needle sizes so that I can, like, I thought I was going to be able to just flip this around when it's hanging and take a peek and see this. Can you tell? And a few of my needles I kind of like untangled them a little bit with boiling water, but some of them are still quite gnarly. It doesn't really matter at this point. It's so amazing. I'm so happy I have this done, and it's gonna hang on my shelf in the studio, and so nice. I still have needles in those old boxes, and one of them has my bamboo needles or all the wooden ones except for a favorite one that I put on here. And then the old hat box has some that are even more in between sizes. But what I did is I wrote down what it is, and so I find it easily, and I bundled them with little fabric strips and marked them like that. Now I'm having a power problem, and I hope you will, since this may shut down, I will pause and I will finish in a minute. Sorry I had to interrupt here again. Rookie mistake. Trying to record a podcast and not having the camera charged. So, last thing I wanted to talk to you about is a little bit of new stash that came to this house, or new things. One of the things that brings me a lot of joy is this needle. It was gifted to me by a friend, and I have used it a lot. Thank you so much, Sue. Use it on that white, on Fiona's sweater, on Fiona's cardigan. And Of course, when we came through Las Cruces on our trip, when we were on the way home, we went to the Farm Heritage Museum, and I found out that Debouillet sheep were first bred in New Mexico. So that was kind of cool fact that I had no idea about. And so then afterwards, after the museum, we went to Quillen Fiber Arts in Las Cruces, where I met Deidre, super nice, and I did a little shopping, and of course I wanted to try Debouillet, and I have purchased this. I took it out because I wanted to dye up some. I mean, I bought all white, and when I took it out, I struggled a little bit with this. As you can see, it's a very irregularly processed fiber, and I'm not sure how I'm going to enjoy spinning this. I will see. So, but still, I had a test go, and if it doesn't spin nicely, I was thinking I'm gonna dye it up and then put it in, blend it in with something on the drum carder. Debouillet, how do you Americans say that? I learned French, so I always want to say these things. French, debouillet, rambouillet. I don't know, kind of silly, but. And I bought more pretties at Quillen Fiber Arts. 3 minis. Beautiful. And I thought, because she had this beautiful base, which is a 65% superwash merino and 35 bamboo. What was I even thinking? I thought this was a base that I also carry, but it's not. But I'm sure this is going to be perfect for our climate. And I got these to combine them in a garment, either a cardigan or a half sleeve sweater. And I'm thinking now a half sleeve sweater, something short and boxy with tight elbow length sleeves. Those were these. And, oh, here's this cool card. Quillen Fiber Arts. Pretty. And then, of course, this a random skein. Not typical for me, but so beautiful. It said, pick me, pick me. So I picked it. I'll see what I'll do with it. And a little while before, I went to my yarn store here in Albuquerque and thinking that I want to buy some yarn to make a sweater for my son. So I had made this hat, which I had shown on the podcast previously. And also I was working on the same thing with black. This is a yarn, and I had talked about it, which has an interesting chain construction. That's one of mine. It was a test run, and it will sadly not go into the shop. But where was I going? Oh yes, but this stitch pattern is just so beautiful. So I thought that I will try to incorporate it into a sweater. I talked to him and he's also kind of more like a gray-black kind of guy. So I talked a little bit with him and I ended up coming home with this dark gray. And I looked at a lot of colors and other grays and blacks. I just don't like working with black. The hat is the exception. But I ended up picking these two and have this be the dominant color and this one kind of like a little more in the background. So it's a little more color than he likes, I think, but I brought home a sweater's quantity, and what it is Barocco Vintage Decay. And I will knit a sample with these two and then show him, and then he can decide if he really doesn't like it. I'm thinking with this, it's really going to be worth the work of the patterning, because it's going to create a lot of interest. And I'm sure you know that if you've ever held two skeins together, some just sing together and others are more like meh. So I'm sure I pulled out another gray, which I know that he liked it, a lighter color, but it was just, it made me think it's not going to be worth the work, you know? And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a sample and then we'll see what's going to happen. That is all that I have wanted to show you today. That's all that has happened in the last, I think it was 4 weeks. My goodness. And I am looking forward to seeing you next time. And again, as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing and for stopping by at the Ravelry group and saying hi and posting something there, and for friending me and for finding me on Instagram, where I am Paperdag. And thank you for all of you who are interested in my yarn. And there we go. I did forget about something that I wanted to show you. In terms of shop update, I thought I'd show you one yarn which I have dyed this week because I had a custom order that I did, and so I have dyed a few extras which I will pop in the shop tomorrow when the lighting is better. And that is it. It is on my Sandia Superwash Merino Nylon Blend sock yarn base. The colorway is the Beekeeper's Daughter. And that is it. I hope you all are having fun with your projects, whatever you are working on, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again next time. Bye.